Good evening, everyone. Magandang gabi, everyone. And welcome sa ating free mini coaching dito sa ating FB page, mga kaibigan. And right now, meron na tayong 23 viewers. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. And salamat sa panonood ngayon. Salamat kay Ma'am Beth Hernandez. Magandang gabi rin po sa inyong lahat. And ngayong gabi mga kaibigan, tatlo ang ating magiging lectures. Una po ay si Sir Philippe at ang kanyang tuturo ay ang the teaching profession, the teacher, the community, school culture, and organizational leadership. And then maya-mayang konti kay Sir Englevert, ang child and ado, inclusive education and research education. At syempre, ang uling-uli ay si Sir Ryan with natural sciences. So magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Good evening po, Ma'am Lisel, Ma'am May, kay Juan Feline, Nizi, Memorasyon, good evening. Kay Ma'am Ellen Villarser, good evening. Rachel and si Ma'am May. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat sa panonood. And please, bago tayo magsimula mga kaibigan, pa-share naman ng ating link sa inyong mga social media accounts mga kaibigan. And also before we begin, let me remind you na malapit na ang ating CUT sessions. Ito ay magaganap mula September 10 hanggang September 21. 11 days po ito ng araw-araw na review para sa ating nalapit na exam sa September 26. So ayan na, don't forget ang ating CUT or ating Competence Upgrade Technique sessions ay magaganap mula September 10 hanggang September 21. At mga kaibigan, nasa chat box po natin, active na active. Andiyan din po si Ma'am Jen. Good evening po, Ma'am Jenny. And she will be there para sagutin ang mga queries ninyo. Ayan. So maraming salamat for watching this particular live session. Again, pa-share po sa inyong mga social media platforms sa Facebook, sa Instagram, sa Twitter, sa YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, mga kaibigan, don't forget na mag-subscribe sa ating YouTube channel, Met Review Center on YouTube. Ayan. So magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. And I think we have to begin. Ma'am Jen, okay na po ba tayo? Start na po tayo, ma'am.
Yes, EJ.
Ayan, ayan. At mga kaibigan, let us all welcome Sir Philippe Hernandez. Sir Philippe, magandang gabi sa iyo. Good evening.
Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. I hope everybody is safe and well, we hope that you learned something from our session tonight. So allow me just to share my slides. Okay. So here we go. I'll be talking about one of the teaching profession subjects that you will most likely encounter, the teacher, the school community and organizational leadership. And you'll also be talking about the teaching profession. Ito po sa dating curriculum, ito yung tinatawag nating social dimensions of education. Okay, let's get right to it. What is the commendable and ideal drive expected from teachers in participating in programs for professional development? Okay, so we teachers undergo professional development. We are required to earn at least 15 units of continuing professional development or CPD, and these have to be recognized by the PRC. So when we attend, sometimes we pay, sometimes it's free. But what is the motivation? What's the drive that we teachers should have? And the answer is letter B, continuing professional growth. It is not just optimal use of time and resources. Hindi lang yun dahil, may pera ako, meron akong oras. Hindi rin lamang dahil we support training programs or we receive support. Less so of promotion and higher merit pay. Kailangan ko kasi para ma-promote ako, para maging master teacher 1 ako. Yes, it is part of it. But again, the question is asking for the most commendable or the ideal drive. Ano yung pinaka-positive? Ano yung pinakamaganda, pinaka-noble? Okay? So in this case, it is continuing professional growth. And that's domain number 7 in the PPST. When should teachers support one another the most? We should support one another. Okay? But we should also support one another when the best interest of the learners is at stake in the controversy. Okay? Hindi natin pinagtatakpan, okay, ang isa't isa. Okay? Kapag ang mga bata na ang at stake. Okay? We cannot do that. So, We have to support one another, but we have to perhaps rephrase how we understand support. A lot of people, I guess, even in the Oriental or the Asian cultures, like sa Pilipinas, for example, we have this wrong notion of support in which, pag sinuportahan ko ang isang tao, hindi ko yan kokontrahin, hindi ko yan aawayin, hindi ko yan lalaglag, o hindi ko sasabihin ng totoo, kahit na may mali siya. That is not a form of support. You are becoming complicit, okay, in a crime or in an offense. Supporting one another can also come in the form of you criticizing a person who deserves to be criticized, but doing so in the right forum. Hindi tamang forum ang social media. Kahit ano pang galit mo, hindi tamang forum, okay, na manira ka ng ibang tao sa social media. Okay? So, when the best interest of the learners is at stake in a controversy, we as teachers, okay, should support one another, and part of that support is being honest. Kaya hindi pwede yung at all times for whatever cause. Okay? Hindi pwede, no? Kasi there will be an occasion in which you will have to you'll have to deal with you'll have to deal with people using the truth. What describes or what best describes the pwede na mentality versus excellence in service or work? Okay, ano yung pwede na mentality? Saan natin siya nakikita? Well, the answer will be resignation to mediocrity. Okay, when you say resignation to mediocrity, suko ka na. Okay, suko ka na, ayaw mo na, okay, at hindi ka na mag-strive to become better. That is resignation to mediocrity. Mediocre, ordinary, average, hindi ka na mag-exert ng extra effort to be a better teacher. That's the pwede na mentality. Anyway, so sweldo naman ako. And that's a very corrosive mentality. Ingat kayo dyan. Of all the tasks of teachers, this is the one that relates most to conduct or deportment. Of course, this is values formator. The advisor is the closest among all the other choices. But here, remember, hindi po kasi lahat ng teachers advisor. Pero lahat ng teacher ay values formator. Kaya, yan yung better na sagot. Okay? Now, a teacher who follows the code of ethics for professional teachers and conforms to societal and cultural standards of goodness and virtue will be ideal for this role of the teacher. Keywords mo, ethics, goodness, virtue. Okay? Hindi lang siya tungkol sa excellence. Hindi lang siya tungkol sa talino. Hindi lang siya tungkol sa angking galing. Okay? Pero nandyan din yung aspeto na ng goodness, virtue, and ethics. That is actually a different dimension from galing. Ang galing kasi utak. Okay? Ang galing ay kakayahan, skills. Okay? Pero yung ethics and virtue, remember, may mga taong magagaling. Okay? Pero hindi mabubuti. Okay? May mga taong mabubuti, pero hindi naman magagaling. Okay? Ideally, ang mga guro, magaling, okay, at mabuti. In this particular case, remember, when you deal with the licensure exams for professional teachers, ang kailangan ninyong aralin o kailangan ninyong pag-isipan, okay, is how do you select from the 4 choices? And always, in a multiple choice or a STEM option exam, you always need to look for which the best answer is. Not always the right answer, but the best answer. So pag naka-encounter ka ng ganito, okay, someone who is a disciplinarian will most likely be a person who sticks to rules, to ethics, to goodness, to virtue. Disciplinarian ka eh. So meron kang isang distractor option na mukhang sobrang lapit. Okay? But what is the best? Okay? In this case, it is the values formator. Okay? Now, if multilateral or multi-country parties agree on how to provide education, they will reach a or an, okay, that's a blank. Okay? So dito, kahit na teaching profession ito, okay, kahit na ito ay legal foundations, because remember, sa education, pinag-uusapan din natin ano yung mga batas o ano yung mga kasunduan na pinapasok ng mga iba't ibang bansa. Okay? So that they can implement laws or implement practices with some level of uniformity or stability. Okay? An example of a multilateral or a multi-country organization is the United Nations or the UN. Meron din tayong Association of Southeast Asian Nations or the ASEAN. Meron din tayong Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or the APEC. And going to the Western world, we also have the European Union. Except for the European Union, we are influenced heavily by UN, ASEAN, and sometimes APEC. Meron yang mga impact, no, sa ating educational system. The United Nations gave us, for example, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. ASEAN gave us the ASEAN Economic Community, at dahil sa pagsapi natin sa ASEAN, kaya napuwersa ang Pilipinas na mag K-12 system. Nung pinirmahan ni Pangulong Gloria Arroyo in 2008 ang kasunduan ng ASEAN Economic Community. Dahil bahagi ng kasunduan na yon, kailangan K-12 tayo. But when Gloria Arroyo signed that in 2008, she barely had 2 years in office. So when the time came in 2010 that the late President Benigno Aquino III, President Noynoy, former President Noynoy, came into office, not only did he advocate for K-12, he was actually also duty-bound to implement it. Kasi 2008 pinirmahan ni GMA, pero 2015 mabubuo na yung ASEAN Economic Community. Kailangan by 2015 ready na tayo. That is why in his first year of, or after his first year of office, napirmahan ang Republic Act 10175 for kindergarten, and 2 years later 10533 for the K-12 law. So, balikan natin itong ating tanong. Multilateral, multi-country. So, maraming involved. Okay? Ang keyword dito ay agree. Dito gagana, hindi lamang ang kaalaman mo sa sistema ng pamahalaan, hindi lamang ang kaalaman mo sa edukasyon, pero gagana pati ang kaalaman mo sa mga salitang magkakahalintulad ang ibig sabihin. Okay? Agree. Pag nag-a-agree ba, may conflict? Parang wala. Pag nag-a-agree ba, may deadlock? Okay? Deadlock is hindi na kayo magkasundo, hindi nyo alam paano gagawin? Parang hindi. Understanding, oh yes, nagkakaunawaan. Pero remember, hindi naman dahil nauunawaan mo yung kausap mo, sumasang-ayon ka na sa kanya. Remember, when you become teachers later on, professional teachers of that, and I would assume that several of you will also become administrators later on, you can actually understand a person even if you're not agreeing with the person. Okay? You understand. Valid yung point niya. Pero hindi mo siya sinusuportahan kasi hindi yun yung estratehiya na pinaniniwalaan mong magiging tama. Okay? So you can understand the person but not necessarily agree with the person. Okay? Ang gusto ng question mo, agree. So your best option is a consensus. Ang isang consensus, okay, nagkakasundo. Hindi lang nagkakaunawaan. Nagkakasundo. Okay? Which of the following is potentially controversial to implement due to the prevailing religious and moral sentiments in the Philippines? Controversial ba na magbigay ng literacy assistance? Hindi. Controversial ba yung magkampanya ka sa mga bahay for healthful practice? Hindi rin naman. Okay? Controversial ba yung magturo ka sa mga tao ng financial management through the practices of the cooperative thrifts? Parang hindi naman. Okay? The most controversial, of course, with the prevailing religious sentiments is promoting contraceptives for Planned Parenthood. Kahit na noong 2012, okay, naipasa sa panahon ni Pangulong Noynoy Aquino ang RH law, hindi pa rin siya fully na-implement kasi hanggang ngayon, okay, meron pa rin nakabinbin na kaso sa Korte Suprema. Okay? Kasi kahit na isa batas, okay, merong mga tumutuligsa sa ilang mga probisyon ng batas at pinapadeklara itong unconstitutional. Okay? So, you need to also have a background of history. Okay? Kailangan bilang isang guro, may kamalayan ka rin sa mga argumento, diskusyon na nangyayari sa bansa for you to be able to answer well the licensure exams for professional teachers and at the same time, to be an engaged citizen. Transparency International, a global corruption watchdog, rates the Philippines as one of the most corrupt nations in Asia. What educational program is relevant to this situation? Isa raw tayo sa pinaka-corrupt na bansa. Okay? At mukhang babalik na tayo very soon sa Transparency International. Kasi for a time, medyo bumaba yung rating natin. We became cleaner or less corrupt. Okay? Pero with recent allegations, in terms of perception, lagot tayo. Okay? So, what educational program is relevant to this situation? So, merong kang issue ng corruption. Lahat ito programs. Pero ano yung pinaka-relevant na makakasagot sa issue ng corruption? Pag nag-modernize ka ba ng infrastructure, masasagot ang corruption? Tanong, yung corruption ba ay dahil hindi maayos ang iyong mga tulay, kalsada at gusali? Ang may corruption ba ay yung mga semento? Parang hindi. Tao. So it's not infrastructure modernization. Socioeconomic development? Well, they say if the economy develops, people earn more money, people will feel less tempted to steal. But even with the growing economy, corruption can still happen. Kasi may mga tao, remember, ang mga magnanakaw ay parang hindi sila na kukontento. Okay? So kahit nabigyan mo ng pagkarami-rami, pag hindi pa rin ako kontento, kuha lang ng kuha yan. Okay? Cultural preservation program. Remember, hindi lahat ng aspeto ng kultura ay positibo. Hindi lahat ng aspeto ng kultura ay tama. Bahagi ng mga naipapasa sa kultura ay ang kamalian ng ating lahi. Bahagi ng naipapasa sa kultura ay ang mga masasamang practices at nakagawian. At lagi sinasabi, wag mo nang kasi ganyan naman talaga, kahit mali. That's part of culture. So hindi lahat ng nakikita mong elemento ng kultura ay tuwid at tama. So when you go for a cultural preservation program and you don't qualify what parts of culture you will actually preserve, you may end up preserving even the wrong practices. Gusto mo ngang baguhin. So kung ang issue mo ay corrupt, at ang corrupt ay hindi naman yung building pero yung tao, ang kailangan mong baguhin yung tao. And that is why values education will be the best. Okay? Kasi tandaan, hindi naman na yan issue ng talino, pero issue of character. With the influx of technology of the 21st century, how can students be best re-educated on the ethical use of social media, such as Facebook and mobile texting? How can they best be re-educated? Sir, pwede po bang mag-seminar? Pwede naman. Ginagawa natin yan. Sir, pwede po bang i-monitor ng mga estudyante yung kapwa nila kaklase? Pwede naman. Pero paano mong paaaminin? Kasi remember, sometimes they will protect their peers. Kahit ikaw naman, hindi mo naman basta-basta ilalaglag ang kaibigan mo. Do we punish violators? Pero ang tanong, bakit mo parurusahan ang tao na una sa lahat hindi mo muna tinuruan? Isa kang paaralan. May mga guro ng atat na atat, tuwan-tuwa pag nagpa-punish. But my question is, before you punish, did you even educate? Okay? So, pwede ka magpa-seminar. Pwede yan. Pero ang seminar, isang beses isang taon. Okay? Kung gusto, at isang beses isang taon ng seminar, pero araw-araw nilang ginagamit ang social media. So what do you do? Okay? Alin ba sa nidadanas ng mga bata yung mas nararanasan nila more regularly? Is it a seminar or a curriculum? The curriculum is every single day, but seminars may happen seasonally or sporadically. Therefore, the best way is to integrate social media competencies in the curriculum. At ito ay nangyari sa senior high school nang hindi lamang tayo gumawa o nag-include ng social media topics sa curriculum, pero gumawa tayo ng isang core subject na tinatawag na Media and Information Literacy. Okay? What enables the learner to fully contribute to a peaceful and just society based on the learning to do pillar? The answer is skills. Knowledge is learning to know. Insights, pwedeng learning to know pa rin. Values, learning to be. Heart. Okay? Ang learning to do ay skills, actions. Okay? Sir Edward, okay? Saglit lamang po na pagbabahagi. Saglit na discussion, okay? Patikim lang, kumbaga. Pero sana po ay may natutunan ang ating mga participants, no? Lalo pa yung mga nanonood via social media. Isang pinagpalang gabi sa ating lahat at stay safe. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Sir Philip. Nako, kung medyo nabitin kayo sa lecture ni Sir Philip, don't worry. Sa September 10 hanggang 21, start na ng ating CUT session. So, kung ako sa inyo, mag-enroll na mga kaibigan. So, before we say goodbye to Sir Philip, pa-heart naman para sa kanya. Heart naman tayo dyan sa Facebook natin para kay Sir Philip.
Thank
Sir
you.
Philip, maraming salamat. Bye. Salamat sa inyo.
Bye.
At ngayon naman, after ni Sir Philip, let me welcome ang isa sa mga favorite persons ko from Cebu. At ang kanyang topic ay Child and Ado, Inclusive Education and Research in Education. Walang iba kundi si Englevert Reyes. Mayong gabi, Englevert.
Mayong gabi, Sir EJ. I miss you, sir. Thanks
Pati
also to Sir Philip. Yes, mayong gabi sa tanan, no? Labi na sa taga Cebu. O mga Bisaya, Visayas, Mindanao, sa mga nakasabot. Mayong gabi. So I hope everyone is safe and healthy tonight. So hindi na tayo magpapa tumpik-tumpik pa. Let's begin. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so my topic is child and adolescent development, and then there's also one item about inclusive education or special education. Let's begin with the first question. Oh, wow. Right. Okay, Mrs. Mendoza is the homeroom advisor of grade 4 service of the following choices, which is generally expected of grade 4 pupils. A, showing class leadership. B, being independent of parents. C, getting along with classmates. Or D, displaying a male or feminine social role. Sige nga, can you share to us your answer? What do you think? Okay. Hello? Can I be heard?
Yes, Englevert, narinig ka namin.
Okay, kasi chine-check ko yung Facebook, sir. Parang nagre-reload yung akin. Anyway, some answered A, others answered C. All right. The correct answer for this item is letter C, getting along with classmates. So if you try to look at the options here, A, B, C, and D, no? Pero yung A, B, and D, showing class leadership, being independent of parents, and displaying a male or feminine social role, according to Robert Havighurst, the developmental tasks. Okay, A, B, and D is more prominent during the adolescent stage. Well, C, getting along with classmates, is very much prominent and one of the salient milestones or developmental tasks during the middle and late childhood stage. No, kasi nagkakaroon ng transition from being a loner, being egocentric, no, nakikipaglaro lang sa sarili, may anong tawag dito, imaginary friend, no, they don't have yet real friends, but then when they start middle and late childhood, when they advance to middle and late childhood, magkakaroon na ng socialization, getting along with classmates. Okay, let's proceed to the next item. A child's brain is unique and vastly different from one another. Which of the following teaching practices below clearly violates the said principle of child development? Okay, so ano yung keyword natin dito? Unique. All right, child's brain is unique and different. A, Neil's talent in music is tapped for the lesson in math. B, Sophia, a left-handed pupil, was asked to write using her right hand. C, Teacher Ken conducted an open dialogue among students of various cultural backgrounds. And letter D, Jessica is given the opportunity to explore the lesson more rather than being spoon-fed with information. Okay, anong sagot natin? Si MJ Humalon, yung pinakauna, sabi niya B. Sumunod si Juan Feline, sabi niya B rin. Tapos si Genevieve. All right, very good. No, I guess this is a very easy question, no, I suppose. Why B? If you again, the STEM, all right, highlights the uniqueness, all right, of the child. Learner diversity. No? putting high regard to students' unique talents, giftedness, and his own differences. All right. If you look at A, C, and D, all of them, you're actually given them the freedom. All right, the opportunity to explore, to express their cultural background, to be able to demonstrate their talent in music. Diba? A, C, and D are very good. No, but again, which violates, of course, letter B, because you're forcing a girl who is left-handed and then asking that girl to write using her right hand. No? So that is a no-no. That is a violation to the principle of child development. Even in education, you're forcing something that is unnatural to the child. All right? You are not promoting uniqueness and learner diversity. Okay? So very easy. Very good sa mga sumagot. Let's proceed to the third question. A large group of teachers in the Philippines sought for the abolition of the CPD, or the Continuing Professional Development Law, since it is only geared to benefit capitalists, corporations, and it imposes financial and logistical burdens on teachers and other professionals. Following Kohlberg's theory of moral development, this group belongs to which level? All right, so ito medyo kailangan natin ng analysis, no? Analytical skills, all right? A, law and order. B, mutual benefit. C, social contract. Or D, universal principles. Okay? Sige nga, can you please give us your answer? MJ Humalon again, no? Parang pang top 1 na ata to si MJ, no? Tsaka si Juan Filin, pang top 2 din, no? Palating 1 and 2. Letter C ang sagot nila, no? Parehas. Okay? Genevieve din. Oh, pang top 3 din tong si Genevieve, no? Always in this particular order, no? Nakakatuwa naman. All right. So of course, the answer for this question, this is pertaining to Kohlberg's, right, theory of moral development. The answer is letter C, social contract. Okay, so if you remember, there are 3 levels: the pre-conventional level, the conventional level, and the post-conventional level. Under each level, there are 2 stages. Okay, but in this case, that is why there are 6 stages all in all, right? Now, in the question, again, we have here teachers rallying because they think that the law is not just, all right? It's unjust, ika nga, no? And according to Kohlberg, you can only reach that level, no, when you are able to contemplate, no, and rationalize and moralize whether a law, right? A law is immoral or moral, no? So when you reach that level, you're actually already in the highest level, the 3rd level, and that is the post-conventional level. And under post-conventional level, dalawa lang yan: social contract tsaka universal principles. Now, in this case, what you do is to fight, all right, against laws which you think are immoral. Not all legal or moral. Yun yung parang battle cry natin. You are in social contract. You think that laws are just social agreement. It's just a contract. Parang marriage contract na pwedeng punitin, no? Mga ganyan, no? So parang ganun din. Although these are laws, but they are not absolute. They can be changed. So you rally, you protest. Therefore, pinaka-perfect na sagot natin for this question is letter C, social contract. And it actually happens, no? I think a few years back, nagkaroon ng malaking ingay tungkol sa CPD na naging money-making industry. No? So naging hindi na siya hindi niya ano tawag dito, it's not anymore standing on what it is intended, to do, no? So the law is not anymore serving the people right. Okay. Next, Saint Teresa of Calcutta is a model of humility and service to mankind. She pledged her entire life to serving the sick and the very old. What level in Kohlberg's moral development did Saint Teresa achieve? A, law and order. B, mutual benefit. C, social contract. Or D, universal principle. Sige nga, anong sagot natin? This time naman, yung top 2 kanina, no? Siya na yung top 1. Pinakaunang sumagot. This is Juan Filin. She answered letter D, universal principles. Dwight also answered D. Jill Ibanez D. Alan D. Nizi. All right, very good. The correct answer for this question is letter D, universal principles. So I think medyo obvious, no? So just let me explain. When you reach that level, of regardless of law, you still do what you think is right, no? Regardless of the law of the society, you're still able to exhibit, manifest your virtues, what you think are important to you. If personally, for you, honesty is the most important virtue for you, then you're honest in all words, in deeds, in thoughts. No? So parang ganun, you have reached that highest level. The highest level is again post-conventional, but then the highest stage is universal ethical principle stage. Ayan. So that is what Saint Teresa, Mother Teresa achieved. Ganon din si Mahatma Gandhi. Sino pa ba yung mga yung mga kilala ng mga big Nelson Mandela, all these great personalities, no? They have reached that universal. Kahit makulong sila, yet they still continue to fight for their virtues, no? Manifest their virtues and ethics. Right? So I think klaro yan. Let's proceed to the next question. Joey, a 7-year-old girl, knows how to arrange objects or things according to weight, shape, color, or size. Joey, as a young learner, has already developed this concept. If we refer to Piaget's work, A, conservation, B, decentering, C, reversibility, or D, seriation. Sige nga, anong sagot natin? Una, hindi ko na alam, no, kung sino pinakauna kasi parang D kasi yung sagot kanina, tapos yung sumagot niyan puro D rin, no? But anyway, correct na naman po kayo. The answer is letter D, seriation. So parang perfect. May nag-F, no? Si Jill, F yung sa kanya. Anyway, the correct, bakit naging F, no? Alright, saglit lang. Ayan, no? The answer is letter D, seriation. No? So, if you can recall, Jean Piaget has 4 stages, no? Under the cognitive development stages. All right, the first stage was sensory motor stage. The second is pre-operational, and then followed by concrete operational. And the last is the formal operational. No, now seriation is one of the prominent, salient characteristic or achievement of kids when they reach concrete operational stage. They can now, they're able to arrange objects or things according to weight, shape, color, size. So if you have several toys and then you ask the child who has reached the age, all right, or that level, concrete operational stage, stage 3, ask the child, can you arrange these toys from smallest to the tallest? No? So they can, or smallest to biggest, they can arrange that, no? Or from colors, no? According to colors, from light to dark, they can arrange that. You call that seriation from the root word series. All right, so always remember that, seriation. Next question. Still Piaget, no? In Piaget's cognitive development, when a mother explains to the child that cats, unlike dogs, do not bark, the child is in the process of creating a cognitive structure. What term did Piaget use to describe the child's cognitive experience? A, accommodation, B, assimilation, C, equilibrium, or D, schema. Sige nga. All right. So, sabi ni Amanda is B, assimilation. Sabi ni Fahad, D. Nag-change naman si Fahad. A na naman. B kay Nizi, A kay MJ, Dwight A. Oh, okay. So, right. So I guess this is kind of tricky question, no? Because hindi kayo, kung gagamitin natin yung term ni Sir Philip, hindi kayo in consensus, no? You're not agreeing to the same answer, hindi kayo the same answer, okay? But the correct answer is actually letter, okay, A, accommodation, no? So, bakit hindi po pwedeng schema? No? Kasi, again, Na-mention na actually si schema dito sa question. No? Sabi dito, when a mother explains to the child na anak, kapag yung pusa, okay, yung pusa hindi tumatahol, unlike yung aso tumatahol. So the child is now creating a new cognitive structure, you know. What the child is creating is actually a schema. Okay? So when you add new knowledge, you call that a new schema, no, or a new cognitive structure. No? But then that process of adding new information, the process of correcting your old knowledge and then you add new knowledge, you call that accommodation. Okay, so I hope that is clear. No? So new knowledge, putting that new knowledge in your head is what you call schema, right? Or actually schema are pieces of knowledge. Okay? But then the process of editing, when you edit, when you correct your old schema, and then you add, no, you accommodate new knowledge, you call that accommodation. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. Erikson has emphasized the importance of developing the child's industry, or else the child may develop inferiority to oneself. Which of the following situations indicates industry in the learning environment? A, students achieve high grades. B, students having higher responsibility for own learning. C, students have high bonding or relatedness in school. Or D, students contribute to warm and friendly school atmosphere. Okay? Sige nga, anong sagot po ninyo? Juan Filin. Oh, nagtatap na ulit si Juan Filin, no? Oh, may top fan pa talaga na dito, no? Top fan ng Mark. A, tama, Juan Filin. It's A, Dwight. A, Shaima. A, MJA. Glyza, Ugsang A. Okay, Jill A. Tama ba na A? Correct po kayo, no? Tama, it's A. Bakit? Remember, yung kay Erikson, di ba, there are 8 stages, tapos yung stages is also known as psychosocial crisis. No? And then, for each stage, it's also corresponding to a particular developmental stage. No? Like trust versus mistrust happens during infancy stage. No? Ito naman, si industry versus inferiority happens during middle and late childhood stage. Meaning to say, when you were grade 1 to grade 6, no? Around 6 to 12 years old or 7 to 12 years old. All right? So anong pinaka-common natin na makikita, manonotice sa mga bata during this stage, industry versus inferiority? Yung mga bata, napaka-competitive. They wanted to show competence and mastery at a particular skill. No? Kung halimbawa sa paglalaro, no? Kung mahilig sila sa chess, mahilig sila sa sa tumbang preso, gusto nila sila yung top 1, so pinaka-best sa tumbang preso, sa Chinese garter, whatever. Pero sa academics din, no, best in math, best in GMRC or values education, best in English, di ba? Gusto nila sila yung best. No? Kaya industry meaning competence or mastery. No? So of all the items, yung pinaka-direct bullseye na option is letter A. When you achieve high grades, for example, in this particular subject, you need to say you are demonstrating high-level mastery or competence. No? So B, high responsibility for own learning, no? Not necessarily industry agad. No? High responsibility lang, no? Parang autonomy, no? Or metacognition, all right? Or independent learning. No? Ganun din the C, more on relatedness, bonding, being friendly, and so as the related lang si D tsaka kay C. So the answer is letter A, students achieve high grades. No? Very good. No? Majority got the correct answer. All right, dito tayo sa next question. The following are the components of the definition of special education except A, individually planned instruction, B, systematically implemented instruction, C, well-discriminated disabilities, or D, personal self-sufficiency. Sige nga, ano pong sagot natin for this question? Okay, someone said Juan Filin answered letter C, Nizzy answered letter C, Fahad answered C. Okay, MJ answered C. Very good. The answer is letter C, well-discriminated disability. So, universally, no? Meaning to say, in the entire world, yung pinaka-accepted definition ng special education is this. First, special education is providing individualized instruction. Kaya nga, di ba, may IEP, no? Individualized Education Program or Plan. No? So, individually planned instruction mo kasi iba-iba kasi yung characteristics ng bawat SPED student. No? Iba-iba yung disability, iba-iba yung kanilang mga symptoms, mga ganyan, mga manifestation. And you have to really carefully adapt your instruction to their needs. Be systematically implemented. So dapat may system talaga. Tama din yan. No? D, personal sa, totoo yan. No? Everything that we teach in special education should lead to the child being self-sufficient. Hindi man siya na talagang magiging matalino or magiging genius level. No? But the goal talaga, pinaka-goal is at least man lang, they can live on their own. No? Especially if these children, no? When they grow up and then their parents would reach the point that they would die. So who will take care of them? So at least through special education, they can take care of their own selves. No? So yung well-discriminated disabilities is not present in the definition of special education. Now, although we categorize children according to disabilities, no? But when you say well-discriminated, it's not really that of foremost important. Minsan pa nga, ngayon, yung trend is to really do inclusive education. Nilalagay sa general classroom setting yung mga children with disabilities. No? So, kaya yan. Next question. Robert allowed his classmates to copy his homework so that he will appear more intelligent. He is said to be in blank Hallberg stage of moral development. A, pre-conventional out of fear of punishment. B, conventional for social approval. C, pre-conventional for mutual benefit. Or D, conventional to obey the law. All right, Kirstline answered D. All right, social. Juan Filin answered C. Ellen answered C. Fahad answered B. Oh, so medyo ano tayo dito, no? Hati-hati, no? Kung boxing pa ito, split decision. 'Di ba? Okay, pero marami ding C, no? Okay, sige nga, let me reveal the answer. Correct. The answer is actually letter C. Pre-conventional for mutual benefit. So, it based on observation, no, based on my past reviews, ganun din, no? May mga marami-rami ring sasagot na letter B, social approval. But naging social approval? Kasi medyo tricky yung first sentence sa STEM, no, sa question. Sabi dito, Robert allowed his classmates to copy his homework so that he will appear more intelligent. So pwede din, no? Parang you will be socially approved, you will be socially, appreciated kasi you're intelligent. You look like an intelligent student, right? So pwedeng siyang social approval. Pero paano naging mutual benefit yung final answer natin dito? Eto, no? Ladies and gentlemen, if you recall, 'di ba, may tatlong levels. Pre-conventional level, conventional, tapos post-conventional level. Okay? Now, hindi po pwedeng conventional level ito kasi when you say conventional level, you care about the law or about the rules. No? So when you're in conventional level, as much as possible, you do not violate rules, regulations, and laws. No? Kaya nga, you follow the law so that you will be socially approved. People will accept you because you're obedient to the law. You follow the law, no, because you believe in law and order. No, that is the stage 4. Stage 3 is social approval. Stage 4 is law and order. You follow the law because you personally think that law will promote peace and order. No, yun, no? Pero in this case, you allow your classmates to copy the homework and it's violating the law. Therefore, babagsak yan, no? Hindi yan magko-qualify dun sa conventional level. Babagsak siya. Dun siya nabebilong dun sa earlier level, and that is the pre-conventional level. No? So ano yung option natin sa pre-conventional level? The first is yung punishment obedience. The second is the rewards, no, or mutual benefit, no? All right, or exchange of favors. At eto, it's more on mutual benefit. Okay, I will let you copy para naman feeling ako. So, di ba, parang you're benefited kasi you think na they would look at you as intelligent person. So, yung classmate mo naman mabe-benefit kasi nga, he will get answers from the homework. Right? So, the answer is letter C. So, I hope that's clear. All right? So, Juan Filin, okay po, sir. Thank you for the affirmation, no, Juan Filin. Napaka-active naman itong Juan Filin. All right, I'm not so sure. I think this is the last question. Of the three parts of human personality or psyche, Sigmund Freud explained that blank is the first to emerge in the process of development. A, id, B, ego, C, superego, D, both ego and id. Sige nga, anong sagot natin dito? All right, sabi ni Juan Filin, it's letter A, id. Meron pa bang sasagot? All right, Ellen answered A. Shaima answered A. Okay, so you are right. No? The answer is letter A. Ito yung isa pinaka-easy. No? If you just know of Sigmund Freud psychoanalytic theories, no? So sabi niya, our mind has three levels. No? The conscious level, pre-conscious, and the unconscious level. No? And then it has also three personalities. No? The id, ego, superego. Id is the pleasure-seeking. Super ego is the moralistic, napaka-moral niya, super idealistic, no? Righteous. Ego naman is the realistic, right? Reality principle. Now, if you notice a baby, yun an infant, wala siyang care sa reality, wala siyang care kung tama or mali ba yung ginagawa niya. Yung sa kanila yung masunod yung gusto niya, iiyak siya kapag nagugutom siya. So you have to please the child. You have to please the baby, no? Iiyak siya kapag basa yung lampin niya. So kailangan mong i-change yung kanyang diaper, no? So you have to please the child. So napaka-pleasure seeking ng mga babies, ng mga infants. Kung kaya, that proves that the first to emerge in the process of development based on Sigmund Freud's personality theory, it's letter A, id. So that's it. I hope you've learned something for tonight. Kahit saglit lang, I hope you've learned something. So thank you for staying with me. All right. Balik to you, Sir EJ, my favorite person, one of my favorite persons in the world as well. No, Sir EJ, back to you.
Maraming salamat, Englevert. And miss na namin sa Cebu. Sana magkita-kita na tayo ulit.
Yes, sir. hopefully po, sir. Sabi ni Juan Filin, more daw. Okay, bukas na magkikita tayo, Juan Filin, at sa lahat ng mga nanonood, magkikita tayo ulit. Bukas, I will be discussing the assessment of student learning.
Oo nga pala, meron pa bukas, Englevert. So, ayan, papuso naman para kay Englevert, mga kaibigan. Salamat, Vert. See you tomorrow. And from one Cebuano to another, mga kaibigan, para naman mag-discuss ng natural science, let us call on Sir Ryan. Sir Ryan, are you there already? Sir Ryan, magandang gabi.
Good evening sa lahat. Sir EJ, Sir Vert, Sir Philippe, Ma'am Jen, and sa lahat po ng nunood sa Facebook Live, good evening po sa lahat.
Sir Ryan, take it away.
Okay, so I'll be discussing and rationalizing 10 questions for natural science. So let me share my PowerPoint. Oops, I can't share my PowerPoint. Miss Clarissa, can you handle? Okay, there. Okay, so basically the major difference in terms of natural science with Sir Vert's and Sir Philip's rationalization is that we are not looking for the best answer here. No, we are looking for the correct answer, because in science, we are actually dealing with facts. No? So without further ado, let's start with the first question. So, Ms. Clarissa, first question is this. No? Which of the following substances listed below is considered a colloid? So A, water, B, alcohol, C, soda, D, milk. So what do you think is the correct answer here? So may nag-letter D, Miss Nizzy, no milk. Ellen, letter D, C, Miss Genevieve, letter D. So all of you are actually correct. No? So Miss Clarissa, the answer here is letter D, milk. So now you have different types of mixtures. No? So Miss Clarissa, please, next slide. For the mixture, we have two particular types. So first one, you have the homogeneous mixtures, and second, you have the heterogeneous mixture. So the main differences of this particular mixture is actually the composition, no? As to where you can see the different phases of the substance. When you say homogeneous mixture, the composition is uniform all throughout the substance, no? Meaning you cannot differentiate the different constituents of that particular substance. So one particular example is your alloy, no? A solid to solid solution. And then you also have a sugar solution, which is a liquid and solid solution. When you go to heterogeneous mixture, so this time around, you can differentiate the different constituents of the substance. So there are two types of heterogeneous mixture. First one, you have the suspension. Second is the colloid. So what's the difference between a suspension and a colloid? No? So when you say suspension, the one particular constituent of your substance would eventually subside or suspend at the bottom in a given particular time. So for example, if you have sand and water, you mix them together, there would be a time that the sand would eventually suspend at the bottom of your water. So if that is the case for your substance, if one particular constituent will suspend at the bottom part of your liquid, then that is what we call a suspension. When you say colloid, there is mixture of two different substances, or constituents. However, your one particular constituent will not suspend at the bottom of your substance. When you go to a milk, when you examine a milk under a microscope, you would see proteins that are embedded all throughout the liquid portion of your milk. When you go to hair gel, for example, you would notice that there are air bubbles on your gel that will not suspend at the bottom at any given particular time. So that is what we call a colloid. So one main difference here is that one constituent, if it suspends at the bottom part, then that is what you call a suspension. If it does not suspend at the bottom, then that is what you call a colloid. Now, let's go to the other options for this particular question. Next slide, please, Ms. Clarissa. So we have these options, water, you have alcohol, you have soda. So when we say water, what do you think is water? Is it a mixture or not? What is your answer? What type of substance is water? What do you think? Andyan pa ba kayo? Not. Oh, is water homogeneous or heterogeneous mixture? Not a mixture. Yes, precisely, because your water is what? It's a compound. So basically, your water is a pure substance. So under pure substance, you have two types. You have elements. You also have a compound. So water, regardless of the amount of your substance, will always be H2O. It's not a homogeneous mixture. It's a compound. When you say water, always the water molecule will be H2O. Two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen. What about alcohol? Is alcohol a mixture? Yes or no? Let me see your answers. Is alcohol a mixture or not? Anyone? Medyo nahihirapan sa alcohol, So when you say alcohol, yes, may nag-yes. Actually, the answer there is it depends, because you have different concentrations of alcohols. For example, if you say absolute alcohol, meaning it's 100% alcohol, then that's the time you can say that alcohol is not a mixture, but it's a compound. However, if you have different alcohols with different concentrations, for example, you have 70% ethyl alcohol, that would mean that 70% of your alcohol solution is actually alcohol, 30% would be water. So therefore, that's the time that your alcohol would become a mixture. And in that particular example, your alcohol there is a solution because it is now a mixture of water and alcohol. So meaning you have to make sure that the question you have a particular keyword for that particular substance. No? So if the question will give you a particular concentration of alcohol, then that's the time that the alcohol would become a mixture, which is a solution. If, for example, it's only alcohol, then we would assume that it's 100% alcohol, and that's the time it's not a mixture anymore, but it's a compound, no, or a pure substance. Okay? What about soda or Coca-Cola, no, Pepsi? Your soda is actually a homogeneous mixture if the bottle is not yet open. No? So if the bottle is not yet open, your soda is a mixture of water and sugar. So you cannot see sugar in there, so it's a homogeneous mixture. However, if your soda bottle is opened, because of the process of carbonation, you can see tiny bubbles in your Coca-Cola. No? So that's the time, if you have bubbles now in your substance, then that's the time your soda will become a heterogeneous mixture. So here, it's quite tricky because you need to be very, very, what do you call this one? You have to make sure that the substances that are being given in your questions are actually quite um, unique, no? So, Miss Clarissa, next question. I hope we clarified those particular substances. No? For question number 2, which of the following is an extensive property of matter? So A, we have weight, B, melting point, C, specific gravity, D, color. So the answer here, may nag-letter A, dalawa silang nag-A, tatlo na. So the answer here, next slide please, is letter A, weight. So in the properties of matter, we have actually 2 types. Now, Miss Clarissa, next slide, please. You have first the intensive property. No? Second, you also have the extensive property. So what's the difference? When you say intensive, it is not dependent on the amount of substance. For example, you have color, you have taste, you have odor, melting point, freezing point. No? Basically, when you say intensive property, this is innate and the chemical property of your matter. No? So regardless of how much or how many the substance is, no, this particular property of your matter will never change. When you go to extensive property, no, now it is dependent on the amount of substance. So for example, you have the weight, you have the size, the length, and the volume. So when you change the amount of your substance, this particular property will also change. Okay. So next slide, we have question number 3. What term is given to the surface of the Earth between the Tropic of Cancer and the equator? So A, Great Circle, B, Meridian, C, Tropical Zone, D, Solstice. So what do you think is the answer for this particular question? So may nag-A, no? Si Miss Lizelle. Great Circle, may nag-D. So we are not in consensus for this particular question. May nag-A, may nag-C. So tatlo na yung answer, no, natin. May nag-C. So basically, for this question, the answer is letter C, no? Tropical zone. Miss Clarissa, next slide. Okay. So answer is letter C. I have here a summary of the imaginary lines, no, for our globe. No? This is a representation of the planet Earth. So when you try to look at our globe, you have their different lines. So the lines at the central portion of our globe is what we call an equator. Miss Clarissa, next. This one. So the equator is situated on 0 degrees. Above your equator, about 23.5 degrees north, and below your equator, about 23.5 degrees south, are what you call the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. Miss Clarissa, next. Miss Clarissa, next slide, please. Okay. So your Tropic of Cancer, as I've said, is situated at 23.5 degrees north. For the south, you have Tropic of Capricorn, which is situated at 23.5 degrees south. No? Beyond this point here, you also have north, no? Miss Clarissa next. You have the Arctic Circle, and south of your Tropic of Cancer, you have Antarctic Circle. No? So at these particular points, these are now quite cold and very frigid. Now, if you go to the zones in between these lines, you will have different um, biomes in terms of the temperature. No? For example, next slide, please, Clarissa. So in between your equator and the Tropic of Cancer, and also the equator and Tropic of Capricorn, these zones now are what we call the tropical zones. No? Or you can also call it as an emerald zone. So this particular zone is highly characterized by the rainforest ecosystems. No? So when you go beyond the tropical zone, no, next slide please, between the Tropic of Cancer and Arctic Circle, and between your Tropic of Capricorn and Antarctic Circle, you now have the temperate zones. So temperate zones are characterized by 4 different seasons. You have summer, you have winter, fall, and spring. No? When you go beyond the point of the Antarctic Circle and Arctic Circle, next slide please, you will now have what you call the frigid zones. Miss Clarissa, next slide. Miss Clarissa, next slide, please. Okay, so at this northern pole, beyond the Arctic Circle, and the southern pole, beyond the Antarctic Circle, you will now have the frigid zone. So as the name suggests, these particular zones of our globe or the planet Earth are very, very arid and very, very cold. No? So eventually, in between our imaginary lines, we'll have different zones characterized by the differences in the temperature and the amount of sunlight that they receive from the sun. So if you subscribe to the Met app, no, I have there several lecture notes, this one included for natural sciences, and I provided several of them. And I hope that can help, no, in your examinations. Next slide, please. Now, when we go to the other options for that particular question, no, may nag-answer ng great circle, di ba, kanina? May nag-answer din ng meridian. So, how do we differentiate these particular terminologies? So, when you say great circle, if you try to look at our illustration, no, you would notice that you have there a red circle. So the great circle is eventually the circumference of a sphere that passes through the central portion of our sphere. No? This is our central portion. This is the plane of our sphere if we try to cut it in half. No? So the circumference there is what we call the great circle. That's what the great circle term is. No? So when you go to the term meridian, your meridians are actually the longitudinal lines of the globe. So the lines that connects your northern pole and southern pole, these are actually your meridian. When you go to solstice, your solstice is a term that refers to the point as to where your sun appears highest or lowest, no, in the sky. So basically, you have 2 types of solstices. You have summer solstice. You also have winter solstice. So when you say summer solstice, it is the day of a year where the day length is very, very long compared to the nighttime. No? When you go to winter solstice, that's the day that the nighttime is very, very long, no, or the longest compared to your daytime. So eventually, I hope I clarified these different terminologies. No? So for this particular question, the answer is actually tropical zone. No? The zone between the equator and your Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn. Next slide, please. So question number 4. Prokaryotic cells are different from eukaryotic cells because prokaryotes have bland. So A, small ribosomes used for protein synthesis. B, nucleic acids found inside the nucleus. C, mitochondria that participate in cellular respiration. Or D, genome that is located in the nucleoid. Oh, may nag-D, dalawang nag-D, may nag-C. Okay. So most of you answered D. Oh, may nag-A, dalawa sila. So for this particular question, hindi rin tayo we are not in consensus, no? But the answer is actually letter D, genome that is located in the nucleoid. Next slide, please, Miss Clarissa. Okay, the answer is letter D. So next slide, please. You have two types of cell. You have prokaryotic cell. You also have eukaryotic cell. So what's the difference between the two cells? When you say prokaryotic, these are the primitive form of cell with no true nucleus, meaning they do not have membrane-bound organelles. So what are these membrane-bound organelles? You have mitochondria, you have chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum, and so on and so forth. No? And nucleus, for example. Now, since prokaryotic cells are very simple, they do not have these particular organelles. However, they have the ribosome. Why? Because the ribosome is the site for protein synthesis. Your cells are made up of protein. If they do not have ribosomes, then how can they reproduce and maintain themselves? No? So basically, your prokaryotes and eukaryotes have ribosomes. The main difference now when you go to eukaryotic cells is that they have these membrane-bound organelles. So basically, they are more complex compared to your prokaryotic cell. Now, if your prokaryotic cell does not have nucleus, so where can you find their genetic material, the DNA? So it is found in a specialized region in the cytoplasm known as nucleoid. So they do not have nucleus, but they have a special region in their cytoplasm termed as nucleoid. Okay? So the answer there should be letter D. Next slide, please. So question number 5. What type of fungus is used in making alcoholic drinks and helps prepare a dough in baking? A, mold. B, yeast. C, mushroom. D, algae. So this is quite a very simple question. Oh, may nag-B kayong lahat. And you are right, no? Miss Clarissa, next slide, please. The answer here is letter B, yeast. No? So we are looking for a fungus. So when you go to our options, A, B, and C, these are all fungi. No? So basically, your kingdom fungi is representative of unicellular and multicellular organisms. So when you say unicellular organisms, they are comprised of only one or single cell. When you say multicellular organisms, these are organisms that are comprised of more than one cell. So basically, in your kingdom fungi, your mold and mushrooms are representatives of the multicellular organism, and your yeast is a unicellular fungus. Okay? Your algae, letter D, is not a fungus and does not belong in your kingdom fungi. What particular kingdom does your algae belongs to? Anyone? Do you know? Your algae, what kingdom? Also, based on the latest 6-kingdom scheme, no, your algae belongs to, yes, one feline, you are correct. Your algae belongs to kingdom Protista. So that is based on our 6-kingdom scheme proposed by Carl Roos. So what are these 6 kingdoms that we have? So you have Archaebacteria, you have Eubacteria, you have kingdom Protozoa is under Protista. No? So protozoa is under kingdom Protista. You have kingdom fungi, kingdom plantae, and you have kingdom animalia. Okay? Yay. Next slide, please. Question number 6. So in order to determine the cause of an infectious disease, a diagnostic test that allows microorganisms to multiply in a medium is performed in a controlled laboratory condition. This test is called A, complete blood count, B, urinalysis, C, microbial culture, D, hemoscope. Wow! So lahat ay nag-answer ng letter C. This is quite self-explanatory, no? So, Miss Clarissa, next slide. The answer is letter C, microbial culture. So here, the statement suggests that we are actually culturing the microorganism or the bacteria inside the laboratory. And that is what we call microbial culture. When you go to A, complete blood count, that's actually an examination for your blood tissue. No? So take note, your blood is a tissue. So that means it is comprised of different kinds of cells. So you have erythrocytes or the red blood cells, you have the leukocytes or the white blood cells, and you also have the thrombocytes or the platelets. So basically, CBC will have a test and count for the different amount of your cells in your blood tissue. When you go to urinalysis, urinalysis is a test for the physicochemical properties of your urine. When you go to the hemoscope, your hemoscope is another examination involving blood, which tests for the thickness of the blood layer during medical spectrophotometry examinations. So, next slide, Miss Clarissa. Question number 7. A two-lobed endocrine gland shaped like a bow tie located at the neck and regulates metabolism is known as. So A, pituitary gland, B, thyroid gland, C, parathyroid gland, D, adrenal gland. So may nag-B, B, dalawang nag-B. So lahat sila nag-B. Yes. So the answer here is letter B, thyroid gland. Miss Clarissa, next slide. Yeah, next slide again. So our answer is letter B, thyroid gland. So thyroid gland basically regulates metabolism. So for our other options, we made mention about pituitary gland. So your pituitary gland is found at the base of your brain. And eventually your pituitary gland is said to be the master gland of our blood, of our body. Why? Because the pituitary gland secretes hormones that regulates other endocrine glands in our system. So another option that was mentioned is the parathyroid. So basically your parathyroid gland situated at the back portion and a bit lower than the thyroid gland. The parathyroid gland is a gland that secretes hormones that regulates the calcium levels in our body. Another made mention in the option is the adrenal gland, which is part of the adrenal cortex found at the top of our kidney organ. So one particular hormone secreted by your adrenal gland is the adrenaline for flight or fight response. When you try to when you see a predator, for example, so your body is actually being prepared to fight or to flee. And what particular hormone is affecting your body? That's the adrenaline, which is secreted by the adrenal gland. So next slide, please. Question number 8. Bamboos, which are considered as the tallest grass, reproduce asexually through extended structures called A, roots, B, buds, C, runners, D, seeds. Wow! So may nag-C runners, si Dang and si Dwight. May nag-B, BC. Dalawang sagot. Miss Nezzy, C, C. So basically almost all answered letter C. So the right answer here is letter C, runners. So next slide, please. So runners are actually specialized stems. Next slide, Miss Clarissa. Okay, so answer is letter C. So runners are specialized stems that basically runs at the surface of the ground. And these particular specialized stems, no, also called stolons, eventually carry with them buds. And these buds would eventually create new roots that will result into the reproduction of another independent bamboo plant. So why asexual? Because it does not involve the flowers. No? So basically a bamboo can reproduce asexually or sexually. So when you say asexually, it reproduces through runners, but sexually, your bamboo can reproduce through the flowers or the seeds. So letter D here is sexual reproduction. Next slide, please. So for question number 9, the branch of biology that deals with the study of animal behavior is called blank. So A, psychology, B, taxonomy, C, ecology, D, ethology. So what do you think is the answer? This question is quite simple because it is a simple identification of the terminology's meaning. No? So all of you got the right answer. May nag-C. So actually the answer is letter D, no? Ethology. So ethology is the study of animal behavior. When you go to letter C, kasi may nag-answer ng C, no? C is the study of the relationship between the living organism and its physical environment. So basically, all the relationships that we can study, no, in the outside world. That's ecology. When you go to taxonomy, taxonomy is a branch of biology that deals with the what? Nomenclature and classification of life forms. So that's taxonomy. When you go to psychology, psychology is the study of the human mind. And to the extent and in context to the human's behavior also as affected by the brain. Okay, so for number 9, the answer is letter D, ethology. Next slide, please. Next slide. For last question, number 10, decomposition is a process in which a substance is broken to make it useful in other processes. The organisms that are capable of decomposing substance are called blank. So A, autotroph, B, heterotrophs, C, saprotrophs, or D, producers. What do you think is our answer? Yes, may nag-letter C. Lahat kayo ay nag-letter C and lahat kayo ay tama. So saprotrophs are actually organisms that feeds on decaying matter. Next slide, please, Ms. Clarissa. So that's our answer. So what are the examples of saprotrophs? So you have earthworms, you have bacteria, no? You have mushrooms. So all of these are saprotrophs. They eat decaying materials. When you go to autotrophs, your autotroph is basically the producers. No? So A and D are the same. So autotrophs are organisms that can produce their own food. And you have two types. You have photoautotrophs. You also have chemoautotrophs. So when you say photoautotrophs, these are organisms that uses light to manufacture their own food. When you say chemoautotrophs, these are organisms that uses chemicals in the environment, no, to produce their own food. Heterotrophs, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of your producers. So heterotrophs are the organisms that eats the producers, no? So heterotrophs cannot manufacture their own food. So that's the 10 question that I have to rationalize tonight. So I hope may natutunan po kayo from Natural Science part. Thank you for listening and good night, everyone. Back to you, Sir EJ.
Maraming salamat, Sir Ryan.
Thank you po.
Papuso naman para kay Sir Ryan dyan. Papuso naman para kay Sir Ryan. Ayan. Maraming salamat, mga kaibigan. And before we end, let me remind you, my dear friends, na sa September 10 to 21 na po ang ating CUT sessions. Ito po ay 11 days ng intensive review at hindi lang yan. Sa CUT, ituturo din yung mga test-taking techniques na mahalagang-mahalaga in preparation for September 26. At mga kaibigan, tomorrow meron po tayo uling free coaching and sasamahan tayo ni Sir Englevert. He will continue his lecture bukas yan. And also, Sir Noy na mag-discuss naman ng facilitating learner-centered teaching at si Sir Mark na technology for teaching and learning. Mga kaibigan, bukas po, same time, 7 p.m. sa Facebook Live. At kung na-miss nyo naman po ang session na ito, don't worry dahil this video will be available mayang-mayang konti lang sa ating YouTube channel, ang Met Review YouTube channel. So once again mga kaibigan, kung hindi nyo pa nagagawa, pasubscribe po sa ating YouTube channel, Met Review Center YouTube channel, palike po ng ating FB page. At syempre mga kaibigan, kung meron kayong kilala na mag-e-exam na, please invite them to join our CUT sessions on September 10 to 21. So mga kaibigan, maraming salamat. Again, bukas, magkita-kita po tayo uli for our last for this season na free MET coaching. At mga kaibigan, good evening sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa mga nanood. And then maraming salamat Ma'am Jen for staying sa ating chat room, kay Sir Ryan, kay Sir Philippe, at kay Sir Englevert. My dear friends, see you tomorrow. Ate Clarissa, maraming salamat for assisting us. And magandang gabi sa inyong lahat mga kaibigan. Maraming salamat. Ayan. Thank you and good night everybody. See you tomorrow. Maraming salamat sa mga nanonood pa.